Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this exciting Dr. Jaspersoft session about Jasper Report Server in AWS. I'm Badr Draifi, your Dr. Jaspersoft host here from Paris, and with me today is our guest speaker, Jitendra Mandalia. Hi, Chandra. How are you doing today?
Hey, Badr. Thank you. I'm good.
Thanks. So Jitendra is joining us from the Bay Area, California, and we will be talking, as you can see here, our different offering of AWS hourly, yearly, bring your own license, CFT, AMI. So trying to give you the big picture of everything that we offer in AWS, so you can prepare your move to the cloud in the best way possible. If you can move to the next session, please, Jitendra. Thank you. So stay tuned, guys, for the next Dr. Jaspersoft session. We'll be talking about our new Jasper Reports Web Studio, which allow you to create pixel-perfect reports in the web application, in the browser, and update your reports directly from Jasper Report Server without using the Desktop Studio app. So stay tuned for that. And before giving the floor to Jitendra, please guys put your questions on the comment section in the right of the YouTube stream. We will be monitoring it and we'll try to get to all of your questions before the end of the session. Thank you so much, and we'll give you the floor, Jitendra. Go ahead.
Thank you, Badr. Thanks a lot for intro. Hi, all. So today we will be talking about Jasper Report Server cloud offerings. So this is the agenda. We will go through all the topics. We will help you understand the high-level overview to the actual demo of installing the Jasper Report Server. The agenda covers Jasper Report Server's cloud offerings, Jasper Report Server's installation on AWS. How are we going to install that and how we use the different subscription. Then we will go to how we customize if any functionality within the Jasper Report Server, and if during that customization, how we actually deploy that to the AWS. We'll cover that. We'll cover the hotfix implementation and the upgrade scenario for your Jasper Report Server newer version upgrade. And then we will touch base on the auditing and monitoring aspects and offerings on other cloud platform. So main focus going to be more on AWS side. This is an introduction. Like Jaspersoft is an open source, embeddable, scalable, highly customizable BI platform. It's a suite of tools which has report designer to build pixel perfect reports and on-demand ad hoc views and interactive dashboards. And it also has a reporting engine to render beautiful visualization and distribute reports for reporting analytics purposes. We will talk about Jaspersoft's cloud offerings. Currently, the offerings are available on AWS and Azure. AWS offerings include hourly, yearly, and bring your own license subscription-based model and different deployment options within that, while Azure offering includes bring your own license for commercial purpose, and that only includes the single instance type deployment. We will see what are the differences and how it works. So first we start with the Jasper Report Server installation on AWS. This is the prerequisites. To start with, to install, any user would need AWS account, a valid Amazon key pair that is required to access the EC2 instances. As we deploy this, eventually things will get deployed within the EC2 instances and you will be able to access those for various purposes. The required permission you will need to be able to run CloudFormation template. If you want to use the CFT option to launch your instances, accordingly, you will need those permissions. In case of bring your own license, a valid Jasper Report Server license file. That's what these are the prerequisites. AWS Marketplace subscription list out the types of subscriptions available on the AWS Marketplace. There are 3 types of subscription available. One is the reporting and analytics for AWS hourly. This is where you get charged hourly for your usage for the subscription, and also AWS charges you for their infrastructure cost based on the usage. The second subscription is the Jaspersoft for AWS with multi-tenancy. This is kind of an enterprise license version. So you basically get option to have the multi-tenancy and other feature sets, plus that actually gets charged at hourly based, right? So that's another subscription you can opt in. And the third option is the option with bring your own license, where you just use the AWS infrastructure and install and launch Jasper Report Server, but use the licensing of your own you have purchased separately.
So, Jishandra, in the first two hourly options, I believe this is where we can also move to yearly, and we get a discount if we choose the option of paying every year.
Correct. So the hourly option also allows you to opt in for a contract, which is 365 days contract. And in that, you actually get charged, you get some discount if you opt in for the the yearly contract. Right.
No matter how the usage of your Jaspersoft is, you just pay a flat fee for a year and that's it, right?
Correct.
Thanks.
Sure. So this is how it actually lists out when you search AWS Marketplace. You see all these three options when you search for the Jaspersoft. And we will see this live when I demo. I will search for the subscription, we opt in for a subscription, and then we launch the instance. So these are the three subscriptions available: multi-tenancy one, which is also hourly, the single tenancy one, which is also hourly, and the bring your own license based on the infrastructure cost, because the license is already purchased separately. Now, this diagram, I'm going to explain when we talk about different options of subscription. We also eventually install those instances or Jasper Report Server on AWS. This is kind of a deployment architecture where if you are using single instance, the left-hand side, which shows how actually it gets deployed on within the AWS infrastructure, while the right-hand side shows how the cluster setup gets deployed. So as you see on the left-hand side, this diagram, it has a VPC, within that a subnet, and within that it creates a launches as EC2 instance. And within that single instance, it has the Jasper Report Server, the application server, Tomcat, and the database installed, the repository database. So this is the installation or deployment model for single instance. On the right side, you see that is the cluster-based deployment on AWS, where you use the auto scaling feature, where you can control how many instances you want to launch. And that's where you get a scaling aspect of Jasper Report Server based on your usage. And you define your own rules around the auto scaling group, and then accordingly, the instances would launch. This requires you to launch through CloudFormation template. It builds various stacks, and that also requires you to build your own separate RDS PostgreSQL database. That doesn't come in built within the CFT of the auto scaling group, where the Jasper Report Server cluster gets deployed. You always require to launch separate RDS, and when you are launching that is upfront you need to do. So when you are launching the cluster, you specify the database connection there itself. So that's the different approach how you basically deploy. Now I'm going to discuss about the overall workflow which we are going to use to launch instances. So obviously the starting point is the AWS Marketplace. We go to the AWS Marketplace and search for the Jasper Report Server or Jaspersoft offerings. We get various subscriptions, as we saw, like there are 3 different subscriptions available. And as I show you here, I'm actually at the AWS Marketplace. And when I search for the Jaspersoft, it brings these 3 different subscription to me. So that's the next stage. Then comes the selecting the deployment or fulfillment method. So that option basically suggests you to decide what kind of deployment you want to do, which we saw here, like single instance or clustered. So that's the option which we need to choose once we decide the subscription. And then when we launch, we get option to launch it through AMI or the CFT, whether we want to launch through Amazon machine image, or we want to launch it through CloudFormation template. So we have AMI and CFT, both options available. And then we launch if it is through CFT, we always need to provide various parameters part of the CloudFormation template, which we don't need to. I mean, AMI also, the Amazon machine image also requires certain parameters, but the configuration of CFT is little different. And once we configure that, then we actually launch the instance or set of instances or cluster, as CFT eventually supports both. Yes.
So here, Jitendra, what will be the use case where users are better off with the AMI or better choosing CFT?
So let's say if a member wants more control over things, then AMI is the choice. But then again, that's useful for single instance. In case of clustered approach, it is always better to go with CFT, because then it builds everything out of the box, like load balancer, or the security group, or all the roles behind the scene. Everything gets pre-built. So benefit of CFT is automated deployment, and you can use CI/CD pipeline eventually on AWS, and everything is automated on your side when you go with CFT. And while AMI is a single instance, and if you want to, let's say, build cluster, then obviously you have to build your own load balancer. You want to define your own security, the security group, and all those things. So eventually that creates more work when you go with AMI, but then it gives you more control, because then you can build every component on your own.
Yeah. So, and there is no difference between in the subscription payments or licenses, the same ones. These are chosen in the steps above, and then you can choose just in matter of technical choice, going with AMI or CFT, right?
Correct. Because even CFT multi-instances will charge based on how the AMI single instance would be charged. It's just multiplier of individual instance charges. So correct.
Thank you.
Sure. Now this one gives you more detailed view of what I have been talking about. Just I'll go to the previous slide. If you see here, each stage is color coded, and now I have mapped it to more detailed details about how each stage, what all options you will need to choose before you actually decide to launch an instance. So if you see, basically at the second stage, where we have 3 different subscriptions available, which maps to the subscribe to Jasper Report Server subscription. So now we have 3 different subscriptions available, which again, I just want to show you to visualize like how it looks. When you come here, you see this 3 different subscription. Now, once you choose a particular subscription, let's say if you choose and go with analytics for AWS hourly or yearly option, you get to choose 3 different deployment option. One is the AMI, one is the Jasper Report Server instance in VPC with using CFT, and another is the Jasper Report Server cluster using CFT. So these 2 options are cluster based, the CFT based, a single instance or cluster, and the first one is AMI. So basically you get the machine image and you build most of the things around that on your own, where you need to define various rules and security group and stuff on your own. More control, but more work. And this gives you with certain parameters, makes your installation very user-friendly and easy. Now, what this item talks about is basically each stage where or each deployment type you select, you always get to choose the version of the Jasper report server, the region where you want to install in the AWS, whether you want to go with only hourly or you want to sign a contract which is yearly, a 365 days contract, which, as we talked, provides you certain discount. And then the instance type, like what kind of instance, like M5 large, extra large, like the minimum recommended is M5 large, and how exactly we use those and what's the difference. I think as we go forward, you will get much better picture about that as we are going to launch and use those instances. So this is how the options are divided. And once you decide the type of instance, then you decide it how you want to launch, and then you launch it. So that similar approach is another subscription, which is multi-tenancy. You get the same 3 different options for the deployment, similar options to choose from in terms of region, version, and then you launch the instance using the particular deployment type. The same option with the bring your own license. The only difference between the hourly, yearly, and bring your own license is the BYOL, you have already purchased your license upfront. And that means after you launch these instances, there will be certain period for which the license will be active. And before that, you need to get your license and replace it. And we will talk about how do you actually go and replace those licenses there. Now, once we launch it, if it is AMI, then it is a straightforward instance which is launched. You can log in, you can verify. It is very similar to your on-premise installation, right? You have full control on it. It is just like it has launched in the EC2 environment, and it has built your application server and database, everything out of the box. Now, in case of CFT, when you launch an instance or a cluster, the benefit is all these stacks it builds behind the scene, right? In case of, let's say, cluster, the clustered environment is really a complex one where you need to define various things like S3 bucket, various instance role, like JRS instance role is required when you want to connect your cluster to RDS database, the security group required, which is required for you to allow access to any user to log into instances within the cluster or a single instance built out of CFT, and what rules and what applications it can access to. Those things you can define through the CFT parameters, and it builds those stacks individually, right? The load balancer, it gets built. You don't have to configure, you just get it out of the box when you launch it through CFT. And RDS ingress, this is particularly required in case of a clustered setup, because in case of single instance, the database is always created within the instance. And it will also build SQS and alerting system behind the scenes so that the notification is sent at every stage based on how you have defined the notification rules. So all these are what you get out of the box when you build the cluster using CFT, or if you build the single instance using the CFT. The right-hand side particular aspect of RDS it shows here is in case of clustered setup, when you are launching CloudFormation template, you do not get the database out of the box installed because it's a clustered setup. It means you do require to build upfront your own relational database, particularly the currently supported one is the Postgres one. So you need to build the RDS upfront, a database, and then provide a connection to the cluster CFT parameter that which database to connect to. The good news is like we also provide a template to build this database. That means building this database is also straightforward, where you go to CloudFormation, choose a template which is provided by Jaspersoft, and launch this PostgreSQL RDS database. And then once it is launched, use that connection to connect your cluster to that database. And that completes your cluster setup. So this is an extra step in case of a cluster setup. So then this page actually describes, as we discussed about the subscription method, this one is the hourly one. It shows the option like here when you choose an AMI, what kind of an AMI it's going to use, the charges, hourly charges for the subscription, the charges for this is an estimation for infrastructure cost from AWS and the type of instance you are using. So it depends on the type of instance you use. The charges would differ, and this is something you can choose when you are actually subscribing for a particular option. And these are the three options, as I was mentioning: the AMI, the instance with using the CFT, and the cluster using the CFT. This one quickly explains the difference how when you go with yearly versus the hourly. If you go with the hourly option on the right hand side, you see it doesn't show you any contractual option, any charges upfront, but it is going to charge you for the hourly purpose, how much your usage is, while yearly is like unlimited usage. Now you buy this yearly license, you always get certain discount when you buy, and you can choose your instance type, number of instances, and then you can launch. And that way you actually pay less when you go with the yearly option. So this one is again the very similar view for the bring your own license. Like you can choose all the instance type and then the licensing and the deployment option, and accordingly all the cost for the subscription and infra would change. The subscription charges are zero here because obviously you have got your license outside of this separately with similar deployment option. So let's demo all these options and see how actually we launch it. So this one, we see these three subscription option. We will go with first is the hourly option, and we will try to launch an instance using the AMI option. So what I'm doing is I'm going with the hourly option. These are the options. Remember, like we provide a lot of details for you to understand how everything goes. All the instructions about if you are launching through AMI, all the instructions about the cluster setup. You also get to see what all the stacks it creates if it is CFT, and you can download this cloud formation template from here. And that is where it is very much useful in certain scenarios where it would help clients to use that and modify that. So now I'm going to subscribe to that. So with this subscription, so once we come to this page, subscribing to the hourly option, you get to choose certain things from here, where like the deployment option, the yearly contract I was mentioning. So here it shows you like 365 days expiry. So here, if you want a particular instance type, you can select that. And when you define the number of instances and add that, now you are actually signing up for the yearly contract with this much of the payment. Now, if you don't want to do that and continue with your, yes, and let's say if you want to remove this yearly subscription, which I opted in for, I just remove the instances, and that means I have the option to go with yearly contract. But if I don't choose to, then I continue with my hourly contract. And here it shows when your subscription started, and then it also gives you all the details about individual instance type, what are going to be the subscription charges, and the savings you get, almost like 12% savings you get if you go with the yearly contract. So it shows all the details here. And from here, you continue and configure that. So now we are going to launch the hourly option. When you try to launch that, you always get these two options, the AMI option and the cloud formation template. We'll go with the AMI first, and then we will also check out the cloud formation template one. And it gives you the option to select the AMI. Currently there is only one Amazon machine image. So that's what we will select, the version you want to install. And for the Jasper report server, there are two options right now. We'll go with the latest one and the region you want to go with. So all these options you always get to choose. Again, you still have option to go with the yearly contract here.
So for those versions there, just for the audience, this is we showing 8.2 and 8.0 because there are two different support policies on those two. The 8.0.4 is a long-term support one, and the 8.2 is a mainstream version. So you always have the choice to be on a mainstream track or in a long-term support track, and that's why you always will have the choice in AWS to be on a mainstream or a long-term support.
Correct. Thanks, Badar. So now I'm going to launch this selected instance. And that's where it will ask me whether I want to launch it or put it into the service catalog for shared installation. We will just use the EC2 instance and launch that. Now we are launching that instance. That's where we will need to provide details about the name. Let's say if I'm installing 820, so I'm going to give you more specific names so I can search later on and stop these instances. So this is an hourly option. And I'm going to put a date. So this is the JRS 820 I am going with, and it's an AMI option. We went with hourly, and then this is the image available. Currently, this is the default image it always go with, which installs on the Amazon Linux machine. This is the instance type. That's the instance type we selected. So now it is M5 large, which comes with 2 virtual CPU and the 8 GB RAM. So that's the by default, and you can always change the instance type. The key pair, which I will use so that I can connect to those instances when it is launched. And I allow it to create its own security group so that it builds the security group for that. Though it will not build like cluster, it will not build various other stuffs like load balancer and so and so. Now I will allow the HTTP access also so that we can access the Jasper report server. And I will also allow an SSH connection so that if I need to change anything on the instance, I need to do some customization or upgrade or hotfixes, everything I have control to do that. And this is what the default minimum 50 GB space we need to provide. I will go with all the other default options, and we are going to launch as specified here, one instance. So now we see that the instance has launched, and we go and see the instances. This is our instance, the one which launched. This is running state. Now we will just access the public website and see and we only have access to HTTP. So we just change that, and it's going to take a few seconds to launch this one. So meanwhile, what we can do is I'll just make sure that I can access the.
And we can always check the logs from, as this is what you're showing.
So we'll try to connect. So now we are actually into that system. And here what we will do is we will talk about customization and then how we actually copy files. But just to show you, like here we have the installed location where you see that we have Tomcat, and within that we have web apps. So this is the folder structure where we have Jasper Server Pro installed. This is very much useful to remember because this is where you are going to copy all your files when you copy for the customization purposes. So now we will go back to the launch page. As we hit this site, this is the launch page. Many times it shows you the login button here. We do not see that, so we can directly go to Jasper Server Pro link, just the URL, and then it will bring up the login page. And with that, we always get the instance ID. Remember, is always going to be your password when you launch the page or they launch the JRS site, and then you can always change that here. Your super user password you can always change if you want to. Just for the demo purpose, I'll continue without changing, and we have launched our instance here with the AMI. Now what I will do is I will go and quickly launch the similar instance, and then we will see side by side even for the cluster, sorry, the bring your own license, but that is with using the CFT to see the difference. When you come with the bring your own license, obviously the charges and everything will look different because you are not going to get charged for the license. I'll just continue quickly because we have seen very similar options. It will have what we saw for the AMI. We'll launch it for the CloudFormation template now, and we will use the single instance launch. Use the region, the version will just continue with the latest one, but here you see like you have more options to select when you choose bring your own license. Continue to launch. Again, I'll select the CloudFormation template. That's what we want to use. Remember, like for the AMI, we use the EC2 instance to launch, while for this one, we are now using the CloudFormation template. Always go with the standard provided default template. And this is where we will build our instance.
So here, is this a cluster or a single instance? Can you remind me?
It's going to be CFT single instance.
Okay. So in the name, maybe you need to change it from cluster to single instance.
Yes, correct. Thanks. So, and the reason is like this is going to be a little better to show the installation, but for the cluster one, it is going to be very similar format, but extra information it will ask, like number of instances you want to launch and so and so, but it is a very similar approach. But on top of it, you also need to launch the RDS and then provide that connection as I showed you. But here, the database will get created in its inside the instance itself automatically. It will use the AMI, which has that. Always for the CFT, we always need to select the VPC, the subnet. And again, in case of cluster, remember, like you will require to choose multiple subnets because now you are going to divide it into multiple subnets and launch multiple instances within each subnet. We want to enable the public IP, and obviously we want the connection from the user's system to AWS to control and connect to the system. Then we do need to provide the IP address, and that's what I am getting my IP address. So then I put my IP address here and then as a CIDR address so that I can access the system or the instances from my own system and control that. I'll go with all the standard values here. I'm not gonna change anything. This is the review page. I go with what options I have selected. I acknowledge what I have selected and I submit. So now it's actually building up the stack, different stacks, if you see here. So then now we see that the template has launched most of the stacks, and we see the output tab, and I think we have this instance up and running. So now we have this CFT single instance created, and yes, we have the landing page, and then from landing page we can go to the login, and then we can use the instance ID because that's going to be the password.
So at this stage, Chandra, we can already use Jasper server with the provided trial license, right? But later on, we're gonna have to upload the license in that page that you showed before.
Correct. So it gives a few days of license. Right now it shows 9/26. My license will expire. So before that, I need to replace my license.
All right. Cool.
That is where we will see like where exactly we replace the license is. It depends on like how we are launching. So if it is an AMI, if it is hourly, we don't need to. But for bring your own license, we always copy it to the user. Sorry, the folder where the Jasper report server is installed. And how do we connect to that is, as we were checking here, we will connect to our server. Let me see if it is the right IP. So yes, we are connected to right now 54.175. So let's exit and connect to and now we are in. So now this is where you can see that how we have the before this we checked like how we, for the AMI, similarly for this CFT we can log into that.
Yeah.
But now there are two different ways, like whether it is a CFT or AMI, how do we place the license, right? So now let me show you for the CFT single instance. Remember, like for the CFT single instance, we always have this S3 bucket created. So this S3 bucket is like, let's see if it is launched and we are able to access that. And that's where we place our license file. So when we go to S3, and that's a part of this CFT there where it creates all these items, all the resources when it builds the
So
CFT.
even if you go back to the events page, I can see there is some in progress task, but that doesn't matter because we already have in the outputs, we already have our components created.
Correct.
So
Always
that's not
look for,
that's not
correct.
should be worrying or anything.
Correct. Because yeah, we see like there are certain resources which are still create in progress, and even if we refresh, that's how it shows. But in the output, as long as you have all these URLs and the resources visible, you assume it is all built and you can just start using it. And this is where I see I copied the S3 bucket name, and then I search for that and I found my bucket and I go into that. And now that bucket is empty. But if let's say I want to place a license file for my CFT, then I just place it here in this bucket at the top level and then restart my server. That is very important. Then restart the servers or my instance, and then it will pick up the new license file.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Sure. So now let's cover about the cluster setup, right? So we talked about these three different subscription. We talked about this hourly and bring your own license. Within the bring your own license, you have the cluster setup. So now we are going to actually launch a cluster, and we quickly show you how the cluster launch works. As we have successfully launched the AMI and CFT single instance, now we are going to do
but Jitendra, as a prerequisite for the CFT cluster, we will need the RDS, I believe, right?
Correct. So we will need to build the RDS for that. And in parallel, I will also, because I wanted to show the steps here, and before we launch the CFT, actually, we will need the link for the RDS. Will not allow us to launch that.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So no worries. So let's see here. What we will do is now, as you have mentioned, we also keep the RDS instance, the page open. So what we will do is we will need to also create the relational data source here. So what we are doing here, again, explaining to the slides we had before, right? Very quickly, remember this scenario where we need to build the RDS for our cluster. Then only we can launch the cluster, because cluster does not install the database inbuilt part of the instance, because it's always going to launch multiple instances. So now we are actually at the RDS. Now what we need to do is we need to build the database out of the template which we provide. So let's search for cloud formation template. And we are going to create a stack. We have the ready template, and then we use upload a template. Now this template, what I'm going to use is the database Postgres database template, which Jaspersoft provides. And you should be using that only to connect to from your cluster, because that builds the right kind of a database requires, with all the resources and tables and everything within that. And let's use the template I already have downloaded. And I will also have shared the link from where you can download this template in the resources section, where I can show you that. So this is the template. On that link directly you go, there is a link to download the template, which says JRS PostgreSQL RDS in VPC. You pick that template and put it here in the create stack. So now you are using your own template, and you are going to build the database here. Let's give it a name, JRS 820 Cluster DB. And then today's date. So, and then select the VPC. We keep the multi-AZ if we want to make it highly available. And then we use we provide a user and a password for the database. And then let's select the multiple availability zone. And then the private subnet, which we will select other than what we would select. Probably one subnet is enough, where actually the RDS will get deployed, and the public subnet. So I'm selecting the two different subnet for that. Remaining all the parameters I'll keep standard. Let's hit that. So now actually it is building that stack. So now we see that as I refresh, I think this is ready. We see the RDS is built. Now we will start building our cluster using bring your own license, and then we'll make use of this RDS server there. If we see now, after seeing it's completed here in the output tab, we see that the server location and everything, address and port and everything is available for us to use. Now let's do the configuration and try to launch cloud formation template cluster setup. We are going to go with the latest version 8.2.0, and let's launch it. It will ask what to use. Cloud formation template is what we will use, and we will launch it. Now we always go with this provided template for this one. Now we give it a name. So this is bring your own license, today's date. Right, and I'm giving some random numbers so that I can track that. The DB host is our RDS server, right, which has a port, the database name, and then the DB user. This is the user we used when we created the RDS. So we just go with that, and then we go and get the security group for that. We are copying the security group. So security group, we have it here. This is the security group we will use for our template here. So it's asking for us to select a security group. We searched. And selected it. Did not search initially. So includes samples. We will say yes, we want the sample reports generated. Now here it is asking us how many instances minimum you want. We can keep 2 to see like 2 instances are created. The instance type, the key pair as the standard key pair I'm using, the VPC ID, the load balancer subnets, and the IP address from where I can, if I need to, I can connect to. It's the remote access. And the notification email. So once we have all this information provided, we go to the next, keep all the other parameters default and acknowledge. And now we are launching the cluster, which is connected to the RDS we just created here, right? So now it's launching.
Live.
And now as I refresh, I see that we have all the resources, all these stacks created. If you see here, so many things this template has created. It has created the instances, EC2 instances as we've specified 2. It has created a security group. It has the elastic load balancer. It has the notification topic for the email address for which it is going to send notification. So all these listeners and roles and launch template, all this is what it has used and created is what you get out of the box. So now let's go to the output tab and see. So yes, it has this URL from where we can launch the website. It's bringing up. So what we will do is from here, we will also check out the cluster ability, which is auto scaling group, right? How we can scale this cluster as needed is also something which is very important for us to see. And that's the real use case of using the cluster. So as the website launches, let's go to check out the resources it has created. Let's go to the auto scaling group. Now you see, like we just created, there was an existing one, but we just created the stack, the CFT. We gave the name as Jitendra 3 in today's date, 9/12 cluster, because we are creating it for the cluster. And this is the actual auto scaling group it has created for us. With that, we can also check that. I think just need to refresh it. It should come. With that, we can also see how many instances it has created. So right now it has 1 instance, and we will see the configuration what we have. So desired instance is 2. When we specified 2, it actually the maximum value it picked up, but the desired instance is still 1. So now it is keeping it to the 1. And if we change this configuration, then we can see that it can allow us to add instances and scale it. And then we can define auto scaling rules. In the auto scaling rule, we can create the scaling rules where we specify CPU utilization. Let's say if you want to keep it 80%, and if it goes beyond that, then we want it to, or maybe unique attribute, let's select, because we might already have the CPU utilization policy there. Let's say network out bytes are like 8,000, right? So now that uh, extra rule has been created, and so now we saw that, like, yes, we have this configuration already in place. So this is how we can define. I'm just going to delete this configuration, but this is how we can define auto scaling rules, and then define how many, and based on that, it will spin up the instances based on the given desired and max capacity we have defined. Now I'll just go and quickly check the login page for the Jasper report server. And yes, we have the website up and running, and we see that the site is has come up. And if we see the repository,
so here you get logged in automatically because you already had this session before from the previous test, right? So
correct. So
so the username and password, I believe it's not, so it's not the one that is mentioned in the output, but it's normal super user. That one works for you, correct?
correct. So always super user is what is working for the cluster. While in case of AMI and single instance, it is always the instance ID. But for the case of cluster, it always works with super user ID and super user password by default, and whatever mentioned here
So
actually.
it looks, yeah, it looks like that needs to be updated. Maybe there is an issue there. We noted this one and we will report it to the support team. But yeah, for now, guys, just use super user / super user if you want to connect to your CFT.
Correct. Thanks, Badar, for mentioning that. So now we have our repository launched, and I'll just show that we have all the sample reports also available here. Yeah. So now what we are going to do is,
here, Jishandra, if you go back to Jasper reports, so you know now that you're on a cluster because you are actually reaching to the load balancer from the URL. I can see JRS B elast, which means elastic.
correct.
Elastic load balancer. So you're not actually hitting Jasper report server, the Tomcat, but you're hitting the load balancer who's forwarding the request to the two instances that we have up and running, correct?
Correct. And I will show you that. So if you see here, the URL here is the load balancer one. And if we go and let's say check the available load balancer, we can see that our own load balancer is there, which is in use by this URL. If you see the last 4-digit 509034, we have it here, 509034 as the URL. So this is the load balancer. So all these resources are actually created by CFT behind the scene. So entire auto scaling capability, now you see that you define the auto scaling rules, you define the number of instances, and the scaling will happen automatically. So this is all out of the box once you launch it through a CFT cluster. So from now,
pretty cool. Thanks. Yeah.
yep, sure. And then now actually we will move to the next topic in our slide, which is related to customization. So what we want to cover here is like there are possibilities, as Jasper Report Server is a platform and suite of tools. Like it provides you ability to customize various aspects of it, whether it is a server side or front end. So in this, in case of AMI deployment, how do you customize is very similar to what you do it in if it is on premise. If anyone has like used on premise, they would know. But otherwise, to explain in short, you always need to copy your files at the right location, whether it is a configuration or backend code changes in the jar file or class files. You go to the right folder, you log into your instance, you go to the right folder, and then copy the files there, right? And we will see the AMI scenario. And then in the CFT or cluster deployment scenario, you always copy the path files in with the right path, but you copy that into the S3 bucket. And that's how we will do the customization and see how it actually works. So let's check about the single instance one. So now this one is our single instance. And let's log into that. And this one is the CFT single instance. I'm going to try that first with the S3 bucket. So this is our S3 bucket. This is our website. We're going to log in with the instance ID. That's our password. Yes, I haven't changed that. Now what we are going to do is, let's see the reports. Now in case of reports, we always have option to schedule that. So I'm going to change and update one UI or do one UI customization, and then show you that how it can be achieved through the CFT single instance and then through the AMI. So now when you see the output options, this checkbox is disabled, right? So to enable this checkbox, we need to particularly change a configuration file. What I have that is this file, which I already there. I will open that file and I will search for the host configuration. Now it is false here, right? I'm going to make this true to make that checkbox clickable. So the goal is to have this checkbox clickable so user can actually store the file on the host file system. And this is always by default disabled in the system. So I changed it to true. Now I'm going to use this configuration file. Now I have to create the right folder structure. And that is what we need to make sure we do that. So what I have here is I created this folder structure. I have this web apps folder already created within the Jasper Server Pro. So I have that hierarchy built. I'm going to copy this file into the bucket. And this is our bucket for the CFT single instance. As we see here, we can always grab that from the output folder. So now I'm just going to drop that folder as is into the bucket. And I'm going to upload. I think I do have one extra file which I have uploaded, and I'm going to delete that for the simplicity purpose. So now I have this.
So the structure, the folder structure in the S3 bucket should match the root folder of Tomcat, right? On the not the, yeah, is the root folder on Tomcat when there is the web apps folder.
Correct.
So even if we want to change something on Tomcat, we can just put it there on the root. For example, if you want to change the server.xml or the login or anything in the Tomcat side.
Correct. So we can always have, so this is a root folder under Tomcat. It means you can have all your conf folder under Tomcat, which you can define here, and under conf, you can have all the configuration files related to Tomcat. So you can change the Tomcat configuration through that. And the web server for the Jasper report server, you need to put it into Jasper Server Pro under web apps. So that way you can control configuration for both. Correct.
Right.
Now what we will do is we will just restart this instance. So I'm going to go to the EC2 instance. All the instances running in my region, and I need to at this instance and reboot that. And I think it already rebooted because it's very fast, the reboot operation. So let's see if it actually, it will log me out as soon as it reboots. And always, like, as it is rebooting, it's going to take a little time to launch the site again. So now we see the page has launched as we restarted the system, and I'll just copy the instance name again as a password and we log in. I will go back to the same create schedule page. And go to the output option. And now we see this checkbox is clickable, which always by default comes as a disabled one. So this is how you just achieve any configuration, whether it is a UI based configuration change or code change, and you can bring it to the S3 bucket and always restart. Now let's go and check about the first instance we built, which was the AMI based, and how do we do that? And remember, like for the single instance CFT, whether it is single instance or cluster, we always use the same S3 bucket mechanism to put all the configuration and customization there, and then reboot the system to get it affected. So this is our AMI instance. And for that, let's get the instance ID. So to get the instance ID. Yeah, so for getting the, let me search. I think we created the AMI one. I see the two options here. Probably this is the one. Let's copy the instance ID and let's try to log in. Yes, so this is our AMI instance, and let's go to the same page. And let's try to create a schedule and then see what options it has and then customize that for the purpose of AMI instance. Yeah, so as we see this, and then I will go to the output options tab. This is disabled now. As always the case, by default, it will always be disabled. What we will do is we will connect to this system. So let's copy the IP. And I think I connected before, so I should have it. When we launched it, we tried to connect to that through SSH. And I'm able to connect. So now, what we will do is we need to copy the file which we have modified, which initially what we did is this is the file, right, for the 820. This file we have modified to have the true value in that. Now we will copy this file from this folder to the AWS folder, the destination folder, based exactly as per the path. So now within that, Jasper Server Pro web info, right? This is where we want to copy. So this folder exist, and this is where we want to copy. So I'll just get a command build, which we can use to copy file from our local system to AWS system, and then we will use that.
And there is always the option, Jitendra, to instead of copying the file, you can just go into the file there and edit it inside using SSH with a Vim or something, right?
Correct. When we have like one file, yes, we can always do that. The purpose of this is just to show like if there are a bunch of files, like you just copy entire folder from source to destination, and all the files will get replaced together. So all your jar files, class files, and everything, you can just bring it from your some source to here. Yeah,
makes sense.
So now what we will do is I'll double check the command, but we'll try to connect to that system and copy the file. So what we will do is a CP from the local path where my file is, and then send it to the source or the destination on AWS, which is our this IP address. I think the copy has to happen from the source. You needed to copy it into this window, the entire command. So for my local, basically, I'm copying it to AWS. Right, so the copy is done 100%. So now this is a single file I did, but you just copy the entire folder structure with all the files in it once, and then you would have the files here. So let's see that if did we have a file here, right? And I just list out, and then application context.xml is copied here. So from this path, I need to copy the file to its actual destination. I could have done that. I just needed to show you a different approach, but I could have done that copy directly from source to the actual destination folder in that system if I have access to. So now what I'm doing is I'm copying this file. Just double checking there is no space, and let's copy the file. And the file is copied. So now let's see, this is the UI where we see that it's disabled. Let's restart the system. First, we do need to always make sure we reboot the instance. So now let's see that if reboot has effect, and when we refresh the page, super user, and again, I always have to copy the instance ID to log in as a password. And now I am trying to create a schedule. And I go to the output options, and now we see that checkbox is enabled. So just by copying that file at the right path, and that's how actually AMI instance customization should be done, which is manually, compared to now the cluster and CFT one we saw the single instance, we just copy to the S3 bucket. I think that concludes the demo for customization. So this slide explains and also refers to certain documentation which you can use, explaining all the mechanism for customization, various customization, and this is what we saw in the UI. I demoed that, and now we will move to the upgrade options. So upgrading Jasper Report Server with AWS it depends on what kind of system you have, in the sense like, are you using AMI instance or a single instance CFT or cluster? So based on that, upgrade always requires basically you to get your all the resources from your older version to the newer version, right? So let's just go through this workflow, which gives you some idea. So when you want to upgrade, verify if it is a single instance or cluster. In both scenario, whether it is single instance or cluster, you have these options. You have a moderate data size, then the option is first export out all these JRS through JRS UI, all the resources, your users, your reports, your ad hoc views, all the resources from the Jasper report server. Upgrade the JRS in the sense, actually you need to install on AWS your newer version, which is, let's say if right now you are on 8.11 and now you are going to 8.2.0, then you do need to install the 8.2.0 or launch the 8.2.0 version separately on the AWS. Then you need to import all your resources. And before that, actually, if there are any customization, you need to do the customization the way we saw you, right? Like there are two options, either manual or the S3 bucket one. So that's the way in case of moderate data size scenario. While if it is a large data size, where let's say it's greater than 15 GB or more, then you always do need to do more steps, basically need to follow, where you can do two things. One is you can manually export out through command line, going through the instance, whether it is a cluster, whether it is a single instance or AMI. You go to the particular instance, you run the JS export command, and then export out all your resources. And you use the pg dump command to export out or um, uh, take the backup of all your database resources or all the database tables and data. Then you get the upgraded JRS. Then you do all your customization related to your configuration, your jar file, class files. And then you need to restore your database. And you also need to import all your resources. This is a
So
very, yes.
yeah, so in that upgraded JRS part, does that mean that I'm gonna have to create a new AWS machine with the new CFT, launch a new CFT or launch a new AMI, and import
Yes,
back the exported repository that
yes,
yeah, okay.
correct. So we always need to do a new installation. There is no in-place upgrade possible on AWS side. I mean, it is always doable in a way where you do like on premise, right? Like AMI instance, but this is more recommended way to do, because
Okay.
you are doing it on AWS. You can always launch and you can change from one type of instance to another. And there are two types of upgrade, not only like you are upgrading to JRS. Sometimes customers want to upgrade their own the instance type, like M5, to they want to
Yeah.
go to much different, larger capacity CPU or memory usage for that purpose. Then if they want to increasing that, they also have to follow these steps. They do need
Yeah.
to, yeah. And this particular JS export command is always available in all your installation, whether it is a CFT based or a AMI based. So this one just explains like how you do the export, the standard JRS options where the admin can go to the server settings, and then they have the export and import options, and then what they want to export out and what they want to import, right? So all those options need to be selected carefully. Always select the legacy key option as you are going from one type of server to another on the AWS. So use the legacy key option and then export out and then import using the same option. Now let's talk about applying the hotfixes. So how the hotfixes are applied on single instance, whether it is AMI or CFT, and for the cluster are quite different. In case of AMI or single instance like base, which was created using CFT, applying hotfix is exactly same. You are going to actually go to the instance, and follow all the steps provided by there in the hotfix README file. Whenever there is a new hotfix release, you will find within the zip file a README file which will explain you all the steps you need to follow, right? And if I can quickly show you that, this actually always comes with the steps to follow, and these steps need to be followed explicitly for the single instance scenario, where you go and log into the system, all the instances, AWS instance, and then verify what files to be updated, modified, what files to be added, what files to be deleted, and execute those steps manually, and then do the customization on top of it if there is any customization, and then that merged file should be replaced with the existing files, and that's how you apply the hotfix on top of your existing deployment. While in case of cluster, there are multiple instances, and all instances are created on the fly based on the auto scaling group scenario and the configuration. There is no way you can achieve that same custom hotfix application the way you have done for the single instance. So in case of cluster, what you need to do is you need to always modify the CloudFormation template. That's your touch point where you can modify and define rules, define commands on what you want to do. This slide gives you an example that if there was a hotfix for log4j. So to apply the log4j hotfix, first the log4j hotfix related shell scripts need to be copied to S3 bucket. And then the CFT should be changed so that when these files are deployed, those are going to get deployed, as we know, like in S3 bucket, whatever we copy, it goes directly to the same folder mapping path under web apps. So then the files will get copied when the system will restart. So that means all the files, entire package, what we need to do, apply the hotfix, we need to copy it to the S3 bucket, then bring that package. In this scenario, particularly log4j fix related shell script will come down to the instances, all the instances when they restart, and then the CFT will execute certain command as mentioned in this command to execute those shell scripts, right? And that's the way actually it is going to apply. So there are two steps followed here. One is the command was added, and another is the execution of that command was also added to add to the step. And I will also quickly show that to you here. I have that template. So see, if I added this CFT template, as I mentioned, like you can always download it from the instructions when you subscribe for a particular subscription. You download the template, and then based on which template you have used, you change the template, add a step, what you want to execute, what are the commands based on the CFT rules. And then you know that on the restart, you want to execute those rules. So here I added that step number 7, which is log4j fix. And with this, now you can execute those steps when the CloudFormation template will launch. Sorry, the auto scaling group, when it will launch the new instances, it will use this CFT template because we have given this template to it. And then it will execute all these steps while launching the new instance and apply the hotfix as defined in the commands. So that's the approach for the applying the hotfix for the cluster. Now let's talk about auditing and monitoring. This is a very standard feature, so I'll not talk much, but just like as we have the standard auditing and monitoring available on premise, you just can enable the auditing and monitoring through configuration files. And once you have enabled that, you always have this audit and monitoring reports available for your Jasper report server instance, or report performance based on what you are auditing. If there is user specific tracking you are doing, then you can go through the auditing part. If you are doing the metrics monitoring, then you can go through the monitoring reports. on top of it, as it is already deployed on AWS, you always use your CloudWatch monitoring capability, where you can use the logs and metrics monitoring all from the single dashboard provided by CloudWatch. And you can also enable the CloudTrail, which is another extra auditing capability you can add on top of the Jasper Report Server 1. Apart from that, I have actually linked a YouTube video here where one of our colleague has actually explained about using the CloudWatch monitoring exactly at just go through this and verify how it is actually done. And we have explained very well here how the CloudWatch can be used to do the performance monitoring.
Yeah, if you want a little bit no more in the integration demo, you can see how we create ad hocs and how we show like the CPU usage and memory usage from our ad hoc. No, if you go back to the move forward to the integration, if you scroll down, you go to the integration demonstration. After integration demonstration, in the demonstration part, yeah, no, in the demonstration. No,
So I'm going forward.
If you scroll down, just scroll down and go to the demonstration, and then scroll a little bit, and then scroll to the left a little bit, so you will be able to see the
here. Yeah.
Yeah, so just go there. Yeah, here you go. So in this video, so we, as you know, so we can actually use Jasper Report Server ad hocs and create dashboards based on our CPU usage, memory usage that CloudWatch feed feed those data to our Jasper server reports. And you can watch this later on, and it can show you exactly how you can achieve the end result. As you can see here, those ad hocs, and put them in a dashboard, and you can have a clear view, a real-time view on how you're using AWS resources.
Thanks, Father. Yes, this is really helpful because you can now bring your CloudWatch data to the Jasper Report server and then build all the ad hoc views, and it's really providing a lot of insights to that. So now quickly talk about the Azure platform. We talked about there are certain level of offerings available for Azure. Azure only provides the commercial version for the single instance scenario. So that is what you can do. You can build your own cluster, but the out of the box options which are available from this launch is the single instance AMI based, or the machine image based. Now, this is the workflow for that. Jasper Report Server reporting Azure Analytics Azure. You choose the subscription out of the two options, and then you always go with the bring your own license. There is no option other than the BYOL on the Azure. You go and choose your region. You choose your option to bring your own license, and one of the two subscriptions we have here, which is 804 or 820, only two versions available as of now. And then the JRS instance, you launch instance, and then that's where you have the instance running on the Azure. And this slides, talks about all the resources and all the topics we discussed. All the links are provided in this. And yes, Father.
Thank you, Jishandra, for this great and rich presentation. Please, if everyone, if you have any more questions relating to this session, just shoot us an email or send us your question to Dr. Jaspersoft, connect@drjaspersoft.com. And as you can see here, Jitendra already put the additional links from today's presentation where you can get your RDS CFT template and all the other links for how to do the hotfixes, the upgrade, and deploying the Postgres instance. Again, it's all of our resources there, YouTube list, Jaspersoft community and answers, the previous recordings of the Jaspersoft community and the slides. You can find them in community.jaspersoft.com wiki/Dr. Jaspersoft. If you can just go to the next slide, please. Yeah, that will be it. Thank you guys. Soon all of today's slides and YouTube recording will be available in our community page and YouTube. And thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Jitendra, for this great presentation.
Sure. Thank you, Badr.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.